Trump has made threats about tariffs on all the dates highlighted on your screen. Those are the days that he announced specific threats. He talks about it every day. Those were the days of specific threats, including a 25% tariff on car parts, a 200% tariff on alcohol. He has backed down or postponed many of these threats. And then let me flip it and show you some more dates. These are the dates tariffs have actually gone into effect so far. It's head spinning because it'll be on one day something will go into effect, but it'll take a whole bunch more back, and it's really chaotic and confusing. No one really knows what is a tariff and what doesn't. And that chaos is as destructive as the trade war itself, which may be why Trump has backed down and delayed so many tariffs up to this point, even as he says this.
I'm a big believer in tariffs. The tariffs are going to make us very rich and very strong. The tariffs are necessary because we've been treated very unfairly by many, many countries, including our friends.
Not everyone agrees, including some of the people who know the most. So when Trump calls it a rebirth, amazing, and liberation day, you may want to consider the context of Warren Buffett.
Tariffs are actually, we've had a lot of experience with them. They're an act of war to some degree. It just very doesn't pay them.
Hello guys, welcome to my channel. Today we are going to talk about tariffs, US tariffs, and how it's affecting the whole world. So stay tuned, watch this video, and then of course you can comment.
Some trade wars, so let me explain why Trump is doing this and what happens next. We buy a lot of goods coming in from these three countries. Trump came out with these executive orders that would put a big tax on the goods flowing into the United States. This would mean that the price for these goods would go up here in the US, which means we'd be more likely to buy stuff made in America. Let me just emphasize, we get so much of our stuff from these three countries, so this would wreak havoc on our economy. Trump himself said that we may feel some pain. So why do you do it? His executive orders say that it's about stemming the flow of drugs and illegal immigrants. He also wants to boost manufacturing jobs in the U.S. and raise tax revenue for the government. But a huge part of this seems to be negotiation. Both Mexico and Canada have agreed to send like 10,000 troops to their borders to help stop drug trafficking in exchange for Trump holding off on these tariffs. And as I'm recording this, Trump's talking to Xi Jinping, the president of China, and they're probably going to make a deal. I'm going to keep an eye on what happens with these tariffs and make sure this is talking about inflation for a long time, just how high prices have gone. When you put a tariff on a product, it is not that the other country gets taxed per se. It's that the cost gets pushed on to the consumer here in the United States. That's how it works. That is the economics of it. When people ask, what's the math? They say, oh, we're getting taxed. How are we getting taxed? I don't understand. It means that you're going to walk into Walmart, you're going to look at the product, and the price tag for the product that you want is going to cost more, not less. That's it. It's that simple. And how former President Trump can speak the way he does about what he thinks the tariff is going to do, the idea that it's going to tax the Chinese or it's going to tax, it's just not the reality of the situation. We've been talking about inflation for a long time. The guy at the bodega added $1 to the sandwich, so it went up from $8.50 to $9.50 yesterday. Everything goes up with the pay.
President Trump has imposed tariffs, essentially taxes, on goods coming from Canada, Mexico, and China this year.
Everything is moving up.
How much did you pay for the coffee?
$3.50. Tic Tacs are going up. Some of the Tic Tacs are from Ecuador, some are from China.
Are you worried?
I am worried, but Trump is kind of strong. He business money. Criminals. Starbucks out of business. If the Starbucks doesn't make money, who can make money? Everybody tries to be as happy as they can be, I guess, but pockets are hungry.
Alright, listen up. Here's what you can expect to happen on April 2nd when DJT instates his tariffs for the third time. Yep, DJT is bringing his tariffs back, claiming, again, that they're going to fix the job market, lower costs, and iron out the imbalances in trade agreements with other countries. But we've heard this before. We know how it goes. I mean, he claims that tariffs would shrink the trade deficit, and then in reality, the trade deficit grew. So, congrats, the exact opposite was achieved. Because imports didn't stop, they just got more expensive. And then that increased price was passed onto the US consumer to pay. Meanwhile, US exports to other countries shrank because every other country that we impose tariffs on imposed their own retaliatory tariffs. He claimed tariffs would help manufacturers here in the US. But in reality, manufacturers who rely on imported metals like aluminum and steel are now seeing their prices skyrocket. And in return, Canada, Mexico, and the EU all slapped, of course, retaliatory tariffs on the US. Primarily on items that will hurt red states like motorcycles, whiskey, and agricultural products. tariffs. He claimed these tariffs would, quote, hurt China, when in reality, it's hurt U.S. farmers and consumers even more than it's hurt anyone in China. And girl, now we have countries in Asia that fucking hate each other, teaming up simply because they need to join forces to fight us. That is right. China, Japan, and South Korea are joining forces to fight back against these tariffs coming from Trump. Countries that have had their own history going back hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And not a good one. Trump keeps saying that he's doing this to strengthen America, but we're paying more for things, selling less, and alienating all of our so-called friends. Is that what strength looks like? If so, looks like we're right on track. So before I close out here, I really just want to emphasize a couple of things. One, tariffs are taxes on the importing country, which in this case will be us, the American consumer. And that even though this is very important, it also is serving as a distraction to all the crazy other illegal shit that's going on under this regime. There are still illegal kidnappings, illegal deportations, illegal mass firings, not to mention the illegal sharing of private national security information on an unsecure messaging app known as Signalgate. While we talk about tariffs today, all of that is still happening. And while yes, activists and the courts are doing what they can to stop this and reverse it, doesn't mean that we can just put this on the back burner while we deal with something else. So yes, as we approach April 2nd and these tariffs are reinstated again, don't lose sight of everything else that's happening, because that is exactly what they want.
If you're upping those prices, are people still going to buy this stuff? Or are they going to wait until this is made in America?
This is not going to be made in America. Ever.
Never? There won't be a time where there's a used wholesale market in the States?
I mean, we can go ahead and open a wholesale market, but the supplies are still going to be coming from China. We have that, actually. There's a EU market in Mexico. There's an EU market in Dubai. In, I think, maybe like 15 different countries now. There's EU wholesale market, and everything comes from China.
Because the raw supplies are still made in China.
Yeah, because China makes everything from parts to finished products. I mean, of course, you can also just import machineries into your own country and start making it in your own country. But like I said, there's no skilled labor. You'd still be missing different types of materials if you want to make finished products. And it's just so costly to spend to open your own factory if you have to import everything from another country.
A lot of the American manufacturers that we've spoken to do business in China say that it's taken years to get to this level, where they've got this kind of quality control, where, everything is kind of safety approved, especially if you're, making toys, for example, things like that around children. Is that something that's misunderstood as well? You can't just, it's not just a matter of getting your equipment and putting it in Cambodia, then you circumvent the tariffs. It's not like that, is it?
It's not that easy, I don't think so. Because I've been to many factories in China. Standard of production has to follow a certain system internationally, the ISO system for good manufacturing. And it's taken China, or like Chinese labor, Chinese workers, at least like 25 years to learn that. And still there are some factories in China that are not following that standard of manufacturing. So like to move that just overnight to Cambodia, I don't think that's possible. But it's under development. Like a lot of Indian factories are very competitive now, manufacturing of daily commodities. Like, for example, you can also find a lot of factories of press mills in India for perfumes. They're one of China's biggest competitors now in terms of these, like, low-cost products. Yeah. Because India has its own advantage of population as well. Land.
Yeah, low-cost labor.
Good things, Aaron, but this is a really dumb idea. Just give you a sense of why. So you're putting tariffs on Mexico and Canada. Let's take car production. In America, cars are made as a kind of integrated supply chain. In other words, parts moving back and forth from America to Canada to Mexico. They cross the border 3 or 4 times, and you build essentially North American cars. So you're tariffing the part of the American supply chain, and guess who's going to come in? The Korean car manufacturers and the Japanese car manufacturers, for whom there are no tariffs. This is a gift to Japan and Korea. Take something like the tariffs on consumer goods or electronic goods coming out of Mexico. What's going to happen is Southeast Asian manufacturers, many of whom are Chinese owned, or the Chinese are using as a backdoor to get in, are going to be privileged here because there are no tariffs on Malaysia, there's no tariffs on Indonesia, there are no tariffs on Thailand. So it's a very weird own goal where Trump is so obsessed with owning Mexico or Canada that he doesn't realize that what he's doing is actually benefiting China, benefiting Japan, benefiting Korea. And by the way, the American consumer pays the bill.
The truth of the matter is everybody is talking about the tariffs, but who is going to be charged the extra money? It's the consumer. And who is the consumer? That is the American citizen who is buying the products, or should I say people who are in America, they are buying products in America. And that is the disadvantage of putting tariffs in everything right now. According to DJT, what he's saying about his policy, where he's putting tariffs to different countries like Canada, Mexico, China, Korea, South Korea. I mean, right now, literally, allies have literally, distanced themselves from America because they are looking at the tariffs which they're being charged, and they are so expensive, they're so high, and they're like, you know what, since you're going to charge us this amount of tariff, even us, you're going to retaliate. And that's basically exactly what Mexico did. That's exactly what Canada has done. And now China, Japan, and South Korea, they have joined forces, and they literally decided to work together. And mark you history, these three guys, that is Japan, South Korea, and Japan, South Korea, and China, they've literally been enemies. They never used to get along because of their history of fighting and all this stuff, which was like hundred of years ago. But now they've decided to work together, to work against the US tariffs. And South Korea and Japan, they're literally allies of America. But right now they decide, you know what, let's work together with China to fight against this tariff, because nothing good comes out of it. Because all right, the reality is America, most of the products you get is from outside, and mostly it's China, Canada, Mexico, and other parts of the world. That is basically what America gets from outside. So wherever these things, your products are coming from, if this country decide to add tariffs, it's going to be very expensive. Let me give you an example. The eggs. Yes, eggs, which you usually get from Mexico, used to get at a lower price. Right now, eggs are very expensive. Why? Because even Mexico, they retaliated, and they also increased the tariffs. And now, who is paying for those extra charges? It's the consumer. And what's going to happen to this consumer? He's going to be forced to chip in and add extra money, which they did not budget. Now, look at, give example. If this is the family of maybe 2, 3, and they're living paycheck to paycheck, so they have a certain budget. Or maybe they decide, they have $100 to spend on grocery, or $200 to spend on grocery. And now when they go to the supermarket and they realize, they've added like a $1, $2, $3, or even $5 on a certain product, they'll be forced to make a choice whether to buy the product or to leave it so that they can be able to afford something else. And that's basically what's happening in America to most families. And this is what they call Fafo season continues. You made the choice, and now this is the reality. You voted, and this is the reality. Tariffs are not good. The DJT always says that, when you add these tariffs, another country is going to pay. For example, when they talk about the border of Mexico with America, when you put that border fence, he says Mexico are going to pay. They're going to pay. You're going to charge Mexico, and Mexico going to pay. But did that happen? Of course not. Mexico said they're not going to pay for that border. It's forced American citizen, the taxes coming from American government, and that's basically what's happening. So the extra charges, they'll trickle down to the consumer, who is now forced to go to buy that product at an extra dollar, which they did not plan to, which was not part of their budget. And this is going to be happening for the next 4 years, 5 years down the line. So tariffs, to be honest, as much as people are celebrating, it's a continuous, reaction. It's not just about you saying, when you tariff this country, we are going to enjoy this and that. No, it just means when you tariff certain countries, they're going to retaliate. And in case you as a country, you depend mainly on exports from that country when they import to your country. Now, for example, America, you'll suffer. America depends mostly their products from China, because China has the labor, they have the low, they can afford low labor, and they have the skills. So right now America cannot afford to start trade wars across the world. You cannot start trade war in Europe, you cannot start trade war in Southeast Asia, you cannot start trade war in Canada, you cannot start trade war in Mexico. At the end of the day, who's gonna pay? It's the people who are going to suffer, because things are going to be very expensive, and very soon people will not be able to afford. Why? Because right now we are dealing with people who are being lay off. People have lost jobs because of the budget cuts which the government is implementing. Federal jobs, people have been laid off. We've all seen that. There's mass deportation from in America. People being deported. I mean, right now things are happening left, right, and center. But with tariffs, trade wars, believe you me, the people who are going to suffer mostly are the people. Anyway, what are your comments? I'd love to hear from you guys.